Welcome to Divorced People Podcast. This is our first episode of the Nik Nat chat. Nicole and I are going to discuss collaborative divorce today, which is something that we do every single day at Two Families Law. And we just wanted to introduce our divorced people community to what we do, what collaborative law is, and how different it is from litigation. So, Nicole, can you take us away with collaborative?
Yes, I'm so excited for our first full length Nik and Nat chat. So we're not going to be talking to any divorced people today, except for me. Um, but yeah, like Natalie said, we wanna talk a little bit about the divorce work we do. We do the podcast, which is so connected, but so we practice this very niche, very beautiful type of family law called collaborative divorce. Um, it's got to be less than like 5 or 10% of all the divorces that happen in America. Um, and everyone I know who practices that wishes it was more like 50%. And I believe it totally can be. So we're going to talk about it today. And if you don't know, I am a collaborative attorney. I've been practicing exclusively collaborative family law for almost 10 years now. And Natalie is our paralegal here at Two Families Law. Nat, what's it been? 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2.5.
2.5 amazing years. And I mean, Natalie and I specifically practice in a beautiful way where our clients work with both of us in a number of ways. And Natalie is a part of most of our collaborative sessions. So we're just going to talk about what that is. What is a collaborative divorce? What does it look like? Why might you be interested in it? How has it evolved in America and around the world? And where's it going? How can you find one? And is it right for you and your family or your friend who you know really needs to leave their terrible spouse? Okay, so without being too dry, I'm going to start with just a little bit of history. So collaborative divorce was founded in America by a guy named Stu Webb, who was a divorce lawyer in, I think, Minnesota. And we just looked up. It was started in 1990, the same year that Natalie started being a human on this earth.
It's a great
And
year.
the two best things happened that year.
Right.
I can't think of anything else better. So 1990 is when it started happening, and Stu Webb, who is still living, and he sends emails on a international collaborative law listserv, very sweet emails. He's in his 80s, and um, Stu was doing what a lot of collaborative attorneys did, which is litigate family law cases, and just said there has got to be a better way to do this. There has got to be a better way for families to resolve their legal claims to alimony, child support, child custody, division of assets. There's got to be a way to do that that doesn't involve going to court and tearing each other down, spending a ton of money, having a lot of conflict, and then finally leaving with an agreement. And I'm sure there were many, many brilliant people that came together to start this. I never want to give one person credit because that's not how big things happen. But that is where its origin is. Collaborative law is now in, last I checked, it was like 38 of the 50 states. I know that there was just another state that passed it, maybe Indiana. But so it's in most, but not all of the 50 states. It's also in probably a dozen other countries. We have, like I said, on this international listserv, and we have an international conference where there are a lot of folks from European countries, plus Canada, plus I believe Australia and New Zealand. So a lot of sort of the Western world has also adopted collaborative law. And it has to be adopted by a statute, by a piece of law that the legislature of the state introduces, and then you need to have practitioners who learn how to practice it. Um, in North Carolina, we have the model statute, so that means that there's this model that most of the states use. It's very bare bones, and it says a couple of things. It says, one, that in a collaborative divorce, the attorneys who represent the spouses can only represent their spouses in a collaborative proceeding and cannot also go to court or file a lawsuit on behalf of the clients. Um, it says that there must be a full and open disclosure of all of the financial information in the divorce, and a couple of other pillars of how to do this process. And then, and we'll talk, Natalie and I will talk about what it specifically looks like in our Durham County practice group and what it looks like in North Carolina, because there can be different versions of it. But the basics are that both spouses have their own collaborative attorney that they've retained. So 2 lawyers, 2 spouses, and everyone agrees and signs in writing a binding pledge that says, we agree that we will do our best to resolve all our issues outside of court. We won't file a lawsuit. We'll share all information together. We won't retain any third party we retain, like a child psychologist or an appraiser. We'll do it together. And we'll do our best. And the attorneys say, yes, and we will help them, and we won't file a lawsuit, and you can't use us in court, and you can't call us to testify in court, and nothing we work on can come to court. So a lot of insulation from the court-based process. And then, so that's sort of the structure of it. And then I think the more interesting question is, okay, so now you've got 2 people and 2 attorneys who have signed a pledge saying, we're going to figure this all out. We don't need a judge. We don't need evidence. We don't need adversarial witnesses. And then how do you help a family resolve all of those issues? And that's sort of, I say that's the art of it. That's the skills that great practitioners learn, and great families bring different levels of skill to the collaborative process. What would you add to that, Nat? That was a lot of talking.
I would say, I'm newer to collaborative law. So 2.5 years. I did real estate for 10 years, so very new to this whole family law legal world. So in the 2.5 years that I've watched like the collaborative sessions and worked with our clients, I think it's a beautiful way and a healthy way to do divorce. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not always perfect, and it's not always like happy and easy. There's emotions, there's feelings, there's still hurt from whatever happened in the marriage that comes out at the table. But it's, 2 people that are prioritizing that, yes, you've hurt me in some way, or our marriage didn't work in some way, or I might be holding some anger or whatever, but, our family that we created is still important to me, and I want to prioritize that and keep it as healthy and loving as possible, even though we're going to divorce. And so I think that's a beautiful part of collaborative. Even with people who don't have children, we see so many clients that don't have children, and it's just 2 spouses that are saying we can't be together, but they're still prioritizing, I still want you to be okay at the end of this, and I still care about what your future looks like, and I don't want it to turn nasty. I still want to maybe be your friend at the end of all of this, and I think that collaborative is just a beautiful way to do that. It's a healthy way to divorce and not completely destroy the relationship you had prior for X amount of years.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh man, it just makes me so happy. I love that we get to do it. And you can imagine that many of the people who choose this, but not all, they're just like, they can be super mature. We'll talk
Yeah.
about the people who aren't, but
Yeah.
on one end of the spectrum, you get these spouses, these families who are so emotionally mature and capable, or so focused on what you were talking about, Natalie, so focused on not hurting each other, making everyone be okay, maybe so focused on like not destroying the joint financial
Hmm.
estate or connections they have, or co-parenting, of course. And because of that, they do something that is almost without exception uncomfortable,
Hmm.
right? It's like not okay. And yeah, so this is the other thing we should say. And maybe some people practice collaborative differently, but I would say the vast majority of collaborative cases happen where the two spouses and the two attorneys sit at one table
Right.
and work the majority of their issues out together in the same room.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, if you're in a litigation context, even if you don't go to court, there's often one of these sort of court ordered mediations where one spouse and their attorney are in one room, the other spouse and their attorney are in another room. A mediator who's like a retired judge or a litigator shuttles back and forth and tries to make a deal. This is not deal making. This is not horse trading. People are sitting at a table and they're talking about sharing time with their children. They're talking about sharing the assets they've built. They're talking about
Hmm.
sharing their monthly incomes. They're talking about sharing their debt. And that is so hard. I think it's important for us as the professionals to remain in awe that people are doing that and trusting
Hmm.
us to help them.
Absolutely. A big thing that gets brought up in every single session, and especially the first session, is like, we're
Mhm.
here to know what your needs are, like your interests, your goals. We're
Yeah.
not just here to, fight the other person or to take everything away, but like, what do both people need to come out of and be happy and healthy, whether that's a financial need, or, a parenting need, or just like I need peace, or whatever it is. That's a big thing that Nicole and all of the collaborative attorneys that we work with are always, keeping as a important goal and message in all of the meetings. Like, okay, I hear you're saying this, and I hear this need that you have right now, so let's talk about that, or like, how can we help you with that need? Which I think is important, is hearing what both parties needs are, and coming to a solution to that in a healthy way, and not in a um I'm going to take everything from you in, nasty way.
Yeah. Yeah. The needs are so, focusing on the needs is so cool. So that comes from the school of thought called nonviolent communication, which was, pioneered and codified by a guy named Marshall Rosenberg. There's a book called Nonviolent Communication. There's also a book called, what is it called? I think it's called How to Divorce Collaboratively by Stu Webb. I
Oh,
just
okay.
gave it to Lydia, but Stu Webb also wrote a book. I think that's what it's called with that. But nonviolent communication is this amazing school of thought, and we give and this is specific to the Wake and Durham County area. Plenty of other states and areas practice this way, but we definitely do. In every one of our first sessions, so the first time we meet with a family, we always say we try to make our first meeting a softball. We try to give lots of introductory material and education, and setting a tone, a specific safe and collaborative tone to help guide the whole process. And one of the things we do is we give a primer in nonviolent communication where we say, we are not going to make these decisions here by making spouse A and spouse B adversaries, and by saying, I'm going to fight for everything that's right for my client. I'm going to adopt her positions and strategies and fight for them. And then the other attorney is going to adopt their client's positions and fight for them. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to try to unearth, what do each of these people want and need? and how can we meet them? And the lofty idea of nonviolent communication is that you can actually meet both people's needs if you get to a real human level. Now, if both people say, I need to have every weekend with my kids, we can't do that. But we would say that's a strategy to meet a need. And the need might be, I need to have quality time with my kids where I can travel with them, or
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to make sure that my kids get to do the activities that are important for them. And those things we can meet. So the needs and interests are so beautiful. As a practitioner, I would say it helps me so much, and to just see the whole world and how we're all humans trying to meet needs. We're trying to feel safe. We're trying to feel heard. We're trying to feel connected. We're trying to feel all sorts of things, and so that's what we're doing, and trying to educate people and help them know their needs, and be able to speak them to the other party, is a challenging and beautiful process. Okay, so that's an overview of the goals. Nonviolent communication is one of the tools. The format, as we said, is at this one table, two attorneys, two clients talking through their stuff. The attorneys are sort of like guides or Sherpas or mentors or coaches and legal counsel. The another amazing part of collaborative divorce is the way we use experts or neutral parties. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
in court and you're fighting about custody, I'm gonna, if I'm in court fighting about custody, I'm gonna find experts. I'm gonna find a child psychologist and a teacher who say what I want them to say and who believe what
Right.
I believe. And then my co-parent is gonna do the same for what they believe. And then the two experts are both gonna get on the stand and testify to what they believe with this like vehemence. And the judge is left to sort of like pick who they believe more, or what makes more sense, or more often than not, it seems like they neutralize each other, and the judge just wishes everyone would grow up and go away. But we use neutrals differently in collaborative. Now, do you want to share about, I know this is your favorite part of the process. Do you want to talk about child specialists, and I can talk about financial specialists?
Sure. It is definitely my favorite part. A child specialist is, we work with a couple different ones. They're child psychologists who are trained in collaborative law, collaborative divorce, and we bring them in for cases when both parents are like, yes, this is what we want. But they, meet with each parent individually. They meet with the children individually. And they're kind of the voice of the child in the collaborative process. Um, if you are a podcast listener, then you'll know that Brian Mackey is someone we've had on the podcast this season in season 2. And he is one of the child specialists that we use on a lot of our cases. Um, but it's just, a beautiful and a magical way for the child to feel seen and heard in the process without having to actually bring them into the process and have them like have this like feeling of I have to pick between my parents, or I have to, make one of my parents feel bad. The specialist talks with them and sits with them for like an hour, plays with them and is like, what do you want your parents to know? What is important to you? What do you need from your parents? And then they come in and we do this 5-way session where, both attorneys and both clients are there, and the specialist comes in and just talks and says, this is what I've learned about your child. They're, super smart. They're really creative. They have a really strong sense of self, or they don't have a strong sense of self. And that's something that, we need to work on. Or your kid really loves spending time with dad. So they love that they have weekends every other weekend with dad, or the kid really wants more time with mom. So, let's figure out a child custody schedule that fits that. Or, just every little thing, Brian mentioned in our episode, the kid really wanted their stuffed bunny at both houses. And so it's like, okay, we must find a second stuffed bunny so that they can be at both houses. So from like the
Yeah.
tiniest little thing to big things about how they feel, or, what they need from their parents and what they need to see happen in the divorce. And so I always think it's beautiful. I don't think I've ever not cried in a five-way. I just can't. I just listen and I'm like, oh, it's beautiful to hear that this kid is getting prioritized, and they're
Yep.
getting their needs heard, in a safe and healthy way. And I always think it's just beautiful to watch the parents just like absorb all of this and be like, okay, like now we know how to make some of these decisions. We know how to move forward to keep our children happy and healthy in this process and get some of our needs met too. So I love, 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 love those five ways.
I wish I never can see your face in the five ways because you sit behind me, but I want to see you cry next time.
I love my corner seats. I can just, oh my God, no one's noticing
Yeah.
me.
Natalie gets to sit in all the five ways, and she's pulling documents and running calculations for us,
Yeah.
and taking notes so that the attorneys and the parties can be so present and really focused on, if it's the child specialist session, just listening.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, gosh, these child specialist sessions are magic. I think it's important to note that the specific child specialist we work with, one of whom is Brian Mackey in one of our episodes, who's just an amazing human being, a divorced person himself, and has been doing collaborative work for, I don't know, maybe 15 years. I think he told us in our episode he had just had his 150th case. Um, these people are wizards, and it is so hard to believe. So whenever we tell the divorcing parents about this, they're like, this is a psychologist who's going to meet my kid for 1 hour,
Yeah.
and they're going to like understand the kid and what they want in the divorce. Like, how is that possible? And they'll say like, well, my kid's already in therapy. Can we use that therapist? And I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it over and over and over and over, but it's true. So the specialist meets with one parent and then the other parent separately for about an hour each. And, they say like, okay, mom, tell me about your kid. Tell me about what you're worried about. Tell me what they're great about. I don't know exactly what all the questions they use are, but they're so skilled that they have these questions that get at the
Mhm.
heart of this. And it's just focused around the divorce. It's like, you know, everything in their life matters, but it's this targeted bit of work where they're just trying to understand where the kid is at. And then they use their own psychological brilliance to try to talk about how we can support them where they're at. So they learn a lot from the parents first, and then they will go and meet with the kid for literally just 1 hour. And they're just so skilled at making a kid feel at ease and comfortable. They're very straightforward and honest with the kid. They say, hey, you're so brave for doing this. And I want to tell you, like, he says something like, if there's some things you're going to say that I'd like to share with your parents. And if you tell me that you don't want me to, I don't have to, but please, know that they're doing that. And it's like maybe every single time, but close to that, the kids are like, yeah, I want you to tell my parents this. And something
Mhm.
about this like trustworthy grown up who's not actually their parent, the kids like have things they want to say, but it's too uncomfortable to say directly. And no matter how
Mhm.
close they are, no matter how great you are as a parent, kids, it's probably their first divorce. Like, it's very tender to go up to your kid and say like a lot of the things the kids say, we hear this time and time again, is the kids say like, I'm worried about mom, or like,
Mhm.
I just want dad to be happy, or I
Mhm.
saw dad cry, I saw mom be sad. Like, is she going to be okay? And they can say that through this channel, and the kids, they just feel at ease. And then the child neutral, Brian and Rebecca are the ones we work with. They also tell the kid, your parents chose to do this because what you want and who you are is so important in this divorce that they hired me to come in here and talk to you and try to understand your experience so that they can take it into account while they're figuring out all the grown-up details. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like these kids just feel so tickled, so important, so loved,
Mm-hmm.
so empowered that they get to like have a part in this huge experience, which is happening to them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's so beautiful. Sorry, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I wasn't. I was just agreeing. Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. I think that's probably one of the reasons you get teary, and I do too, is I think, you know, 8 out of 10 of the parents that we work with says like, my kids are the most important thing. I just want to like take care of them. I want to protect them. I want this to be good for them. But actually doing that when you start making the legal decisions, because
Mm-hmm.
like Nat said, we learned in the 80s that the best way to do it is not to have your kid come to a courtroom and the judge say, hey kid, which parent do you want to live with or how long? They did that to kids who were 5 years old, 7 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe some kids like have that sense and are right, but I think a lot of kids felt really torn trying to choose between their parents and having to make such a big decision. And I think what we hear that child psychology has learned is that the best thing for your kid is for the grown-ups to make those big decisions so that kids can make decisions about, what do I want to wear to school for pajama day, and, how am I going to do in the school play, not,
Mm-hmm.
where am I going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So this really operationalizes that by bringing their voice in a, like you said, a safe way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We just had a client recently tell us that their child read a book when they were younger that had a divorce in it, and the kid had to go into the court and do that. And so when they told their child, we're separating, their reaction was, oh my gosh, do I have to go to court and tell a judge who I want to live with? And like, I can't make those decisions. And they were just terrified about this whole process and that word, like, oh, we're divorcing. And so it was, nice to be able to tell these people, well, one, you don't have to do that. And two, they can talk to the child specialist and tell them, talk to them about it, tell them what their concerns are, their worries, and you can hear what they need from this process without it being like a scary courtroom judge that they have to talk to instead.
Yeah. I know that was such a good example because that case, I mean, these are extraordinary parents. Like if you think about the best case parents, parents who are emotionally
Mhm.
intelligent, available, involved, they understand their kid, they love their kid, they're supportive. But still, it's like, it's a mystery to the kid. Um, I had a call yesterday after I saw you, Nat, with a child psychologist who represents or who is working with one of the kids of one of our families, and they're having a conversation with the kids, telling them about what's happening.
Mhm.
And she was saying, this therapist was saying how important being clear and direct is with the kid. And that's something I've heard from our neutrals too, is like, like this kiddo you talked about that read a book about what divorce is, like really just speaking so directly to them, like your parents are getting divorced, they're not getting
Mhm.
back together, they're going to live in separate houses, this is what's going to happen to you. um, and those are things that the child specialist can coach the parents on how to do that. They can speak directly, and I think kids of maybe of all ages, they do better like just being direct, like not beating around the bush, like
Mhm.
let's just talk about what's going to happen. Like no, you do not have to go to a judge and pick your own custodial schedule.
Mhm. Especially, I feel like there's so many children now that are, neurodiverse. And so
Yes.
anxiety and stuff, is a part of that. So being direct and letting them have this place and this voice is important for them and their brains to process everything and to not have this like constant confusion or anxiety or fear in what's going on in their life, but to feel settled and like, okay, I know what's happening. Mommy lives here. daddy lives here, or, whatever, and have this, you know, I can't think of the word I need, but like, just have this sense of comfort that this is what's going on in my life and I know where I'm going on what days. I know that my mommy and daddy have what they need. I know that they care about me in this process and that they care about what I need as well. So I think that's just another big part of this. There's
Yeah.
so many kids. We see so many of our clients that have, neurospicy kids and whatever their needs are. And that's a big part of making sure that they feel safe, and that it all clicks in their brain, however it's wired and
Yeah.
however they think.
That's right. That's right. And that's what you get when you have this neutral person that gets to actually meet the kid, because the same things do not apply to the same kids. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
often, bless these parents, the psychologist will meet with multiple siblings and they'll be like, okay, well, this kid really needs, a phone call every day, but this kid really doesn't, or like this kid does
Yeah.
well with transitions, this one does terrible. But often the psychologist can help with like, okay, this is how you want to explain this to your ADHD kid, because
Yeah.
that's how their brain works. Or even, Brian talks about like this kid, they like to have a lot of control within them. So, let them
Mm-hmm.
make choices. But this kid likes externally for other people to have more control. So don't let
Yes.
them or don't ask them to make
Yes.
these choices.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I always, often when I'm describing collaborative divorce, I do it by contrasting with litigation, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just night and day. And because that's the other option. The other option, the vast majority of divorces that happen, just because that's the system that we've got and because it's the system that we've had, but I don't think at all because it's the best system, is litigation. And so in litigation, if you have kids with needs, first of all, you can't really afford to have a custody trial unless both parents have access to like 30 plus $1,000. It's incredibly expensive to try custody. So if you have kids who you feel like are not doing great, and again, we talked about this with Brian, but the research is that, kids should adjust to divorce about 1 to 2 years after the separation. And if they're not doing well, or even if they just need extra support during that time, maybe you need to modify custody. Maybe you just need something as simple as like, FaceTime calls or a different schedule.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to court to do that, the entire US court system, criminal and civil, and certainly family law, is an adversarial system. It is spouse A versus spouse B. It is not,
Mm-hmm.
the court says, you do not have the same interests, you are enemies. You are.
Mm-hmm.
And to win a trial, you have got to elevate your own position and take down the other person. And maybe that system works, in a criminal court, or one, you've supposedly got one person who's bad and one who's a victim. But where you have to raise kids together, you have a shared interest, like it or not. You have the shared interest of your kid. And so, what
Mm-hmm.
you would do there with child psychologists is you'd be asking these psychologists to sort of take a side or take a stance. And I'll tell you, from when I litigated and from my own case, therapists do not want to do this. They are
Yeah.
people who went into a profession to take care of children and
Mm-hmm.
to help kids thrive. And they know that having the parents in a fight is not good for kids. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these therapists are incredibly reluctant. I used to, when I was a litigator against my own ethics, I'd have to subpoena these people and be like, hey, you have to come hang out in this courtroom for 6 hours. And you have to say whether you think, this kiddo would be better off with this or that. And then they're worried about compromising their relationship with the parents, because they want to have a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with both parents.
Yeah.
And so here you get to do that. Like these neutrals, they're also so expert. They can talk to both parents, so they can sit down. So they're in the room, they've got both attorneys, the kiddo is not there. They've got both parents, so you can look at one mom and say like, you know what, your kid told me he loves hanging out with you. He loves being outdoors with you, and he wishes he had more time outdoors, and he's worried you're on your phone too much, and it would mean a lot to him to do that. And
Mhm.
they say it in this loving way. I mean, I was even more too judgy, but they say it in this loving, non-judgmental, educational way. And then, then maybe they look at the other mom and they're like, he's worried. He's worried about you. He can sense that you're not happy. Maybe you could model self-care in these ways and talk about that.
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
kept all those relationships intact. It's totally different from litigation. It's so beautiful. It's like one of the best things you can do for your kids. Okay, so we're obsessed with child neutrals, one of the best things about collaborative divorce. The other type of neutral that we might bring in is usually a financial neutral, kind of less glamorous, but again, the same contrast to litigation applies. That in litigation, if I'm asking for a value of the house or a pension, or, more commonly, I'm trying to do like planning for retirement or alimony or something, you're almost looking for someone to like skew the data in a certain way to say what you want to say, and so will the other
Mhm.
party. And again, the collaborative pledge requires that they hire the expert jointly, they attend joint sessions, the expert gets the same, paperwork and documentation and data from both parents, and everyone gets to see it. And, so we've got a great financial planner who comes and talks to our clients, and, he might say to one spouse, like, I know you are nervous about paying spousal support, but I'm here to
Mhm.
say that if you don't pay an adequate amount, your ex-partner could be in big trouble, and, their earnings are different and this is
Mhm.
why. And it's just much easier to hear that from someone you've been working with and who is taking both of your interests into account. Um,
Yeah. Someone that sees the details of your finances and is an expert. Like sometimes, you or the other attorney will say the same thing, but in their mind, they're like, no, you're not a financial expert. But someone that's actually a financial expert and is
yes.
crunching the numbers, they're like, oh, no, that makes total sense. I was like, it's what we've been telling you for the last two meetings. But
That's true. Yeah, that is true. Like we love experts. We love feeling competent. So you see someone who's like, "Hi, I've spent 25 years running financial projections and this is what your retirement looks like," is better
Mhm.
than, your ex-wife saying, "I don't think you should do that." Um,
Yeah. I
yeah, and I
think
would
the
say
financial expert is always a plus and comforting when we have like a dependent spouse and they have all of that fear of like, how am I going to make this work? I've been a dependent spouse my whole life, or this whole marriage. I don't have the finances. What am I going to do? And then the financial expert just comes in and shows them, like, okay, you take 50% of these assets and you got this and you got your spousal support, and bam, like you're financially healthy or whatever it is, ends up being. And then that you just see that, like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like I can make this work. So I always think that's nice to see, and just like a plus for the dependent spouse to see
yeah.
too.
Totally. Yeah, and when we say dependent spouse for the newbies, that's a person who was financially dependent on their spouse throughout the marriage, and that's often someone in North Carolina. They use that language in the statutes. That's someone who's going to need spousal support to be able
Mhm.
to divorce and to be okay. And I love what you said when you were talking, Natalie, about like the financial planners sort of like problem solving, okay,
Yeah.
let's pull from this asset now and this one later, and we can do this tax free, but this will have a
Mhm.
tougher tax consequence. That's one of the best lenses in collaborative divorce. And it confuses the clients every time because they're all like, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to like hate each other and fight for our rights. And what we keep nudging them back to is saying, like, this is a group project and we're problem solving for both of you. We want neither of you to leave here in financial dire straits. We want neither of you to leave here feeling like crap. We want you
Mhm.
both to leave here doing okay,
Mhm.
as best we can with the resources that are available. Um, and it just like shifts the whole paradigm. I mean, Mark Springfield, who is a mentor to me and um, one of the practitioners of collaborative law in North Carolina who brought the practice to this state. We've got a couple of tough cases right now where, lots of pain, lots of emotion. This is not a kumbaya situation. These people aren't hugging at the end of a session. Lots of pain, and still he's brilliantly um, helped his client who doesn't want the divorce and who is really scared about a lot of things to see this as a problem solving thing.
Mhm.
And that's what we do now. It's like, okay, it's not about you get this money, you get that. It's like, we know we're sharing this estate. How do we do
Mhm.
it? Do we pull from your retirement accounts? Do we take out a loan? Do we refinance the mortgage? Do we take a home equity line? Do we make some payments over 10 years and some now? Um, that was something that I saw so little of in litigation because you're so focused on proving you're right and the other person is wrong that there's not even this
Mhm.
energy to just be creative of
Mhm.
like we see crazy creative stuff, right?
Yes, for sure. That's what I was gonna say, like, there's so many ways to divide up things or
Yeah.
to, make a small pot of money work. It's just we see all of these really cool creative ways. There's so many ways to deal with your marital home, like loan assumptions, and it doesn't have to be refinanced. So many people come to us and they're like, I can't refinance our home. I have a 2.5 interest rate and I don't want a 7% interest rate. And we're like, great, let's try loan assumption. Let's try different things. And you can get so creative in this process, which is what I think is so cool. Like, from just the parenting plan or the financial plan,
Yep.
like both, you can get so creative. You don't have to stick to like this like rigid, this is how we do things in the court. Like you can do it differently. You can nest. There's just so many different amazing ways to make it work for your two new separate families, which I think is awesome.
It's like endlessly invigorating. I agree, right? People come to us and they say, I don't want to get rid of this interest rate, or people say, how could I ever buy them out of this house? We have
Mhm.
$500,000 of equity in there. And often the first thing I say is, I know that's scary. We've done this 1,000 times. Like, we
Yeah.
will figure it out. And I'm not just talking about wealthy people. I mean, I'm talking about
Yeah.
everybody. There is a way. You play with time. How long does it happen? You play with
Yes.
creative things, like you said, an assumption or a HELOC, a home equity line.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's just a
We've seen it
different
all.
process. Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've
And
seen it
still new
all.
creative things
Yeah.
like every month we'll get one. We're like, wow, I never saw that. Like, good for
Yes.
you.
Exactly. And we have clients like that range from their debt is more than their assets to like very wealthy people. So like we
Yeah.
have seen it, work out or creative ways for every type of family and every type of financial need.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
totally.
so
It's
cool.
true. Yeah, that's important. I would say that to everyone. Um, and I guess I'd put a caveat out there that in a collaborative divorce, you do hire two attorneys, which is more expensive than
Mhm.
one. We do have another option at two families called cooperative divorce, where one attorney represents one spouse and the other spouse self represents, and you can still do non adversarial out of court process.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different than collaborative, but, and in fact, we have so many clients who are sort of low wealth and they don't
Mhm.
want to spend a lot of money on legal fees, but they do want some oversight, some help, some support,
Yeah.
some binding language. And this is way cheaper
Yes.
than litigation. I can't believe it's taken us. We're 45 minutes in, and we're just now talking about how it's cheaper. But
Yeah, that's true.
if folks aren't drawn to collaborative because they value their children or their relationship or their sanity, they will also be drawn because it is invariably lower cost because you're not
Mhm.
paying to demand discovery. You're not going to court. You're not just paying lawyers to fight about every little thing.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of it yourself.
I remember we had a client one time, I was doing the signing appointment with him to sign his separation agreement, and they mentioned how their friend just went through a divorce and it was like 40 grand in attorney's fees for litigation. And this client, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this one was a super easy case, like adult children's. There's no parenting plan. They already knew what they wanted to do. It was like a very quick case. And I was like, wow, you've paid like not even a fraction of 40,000 to get this
Yeah.
done. So he was mind blown himself at how cheap it could be to be just, all right, this is our
Yeah.
agreement. We're done. And I didn't just spend my life fortune to pay for it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. Spend money that I could be using to like retire or send my kids to
Yes.
college. I mean, truly, that was one of the things I felt the worst about when I would litigate. One of the worst trials at the end of my very brief litigation career. They spent easily 40K each, probably more. And their kids were like, I don't know, 5 and 8. And I'm like, and these people, they were not wealthy people. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like
Yeah.
living expenses for your kids for years and
Yes.
years. Okay, so one thing else that I'd love to talk about and hear your view on, Natalie, and this is a common question, is like, how collaborative do you have to be? How friendly do you
Mhm.
have to be? Like, some people have an image of collaborative divorce that it's like the one percenters who are just so amicable for whatever
Mhm.
reason. Um, which, like, as we said, they exist and we love them and they should be celebrated because that is a model that we can all learn from. But
Right.
it's certainly not that, right? That's not what I
Right.
see.
Yeah, I used to say that when I first started working at Two Families. I used to always tell people, like, we do friendly divorce. And then I very quickly learned sitting in on some of the sessions, I'm like, oh, some of you are not the
Not
friendliest
always.
to each other. Yeah. So I stopped saying that. I say we do healthy divorce, which I still get a bunch of looks like, Psh, healthy divorce, that's not a thing. And I'm like, it is actually. Let me tell you why. But
Yeah, it
Oh,
is.
it is. But yeah, we have, we do have the clients that come in and they still get along great, but we do have clients that there's clearly a lot of deep hurt and deep pain. There's power imbalance sometimes. Sometimes there's even, like emotional abuse or financial abuse that goes into there. We've had plenty of those that we have to um, handle
Totally.
delicately and make sure that the process is a safe process for whoever is feeling that. And we've had people worry about that, like I'm scared to be in the room with them, like and stuff like that, and having to balance that and make sure that they feel safe and still feel like they can do this collaboratively, because that is their goal, that they come in like they don't want to do it the other way. They do want this to be a collaborative process. They do want this to be um, a healthier process, a better process for their kids or for them. um, and they don't want to drag it out, and so there's that fine balance that we have to do to make sure that that person who does feel like they're in an abusive situation is feeling safe and not feeling like we're just you know dragging the abuse on or adding to it in any way. So there is that fine line that I've
Yeah.
definitely seen um, us have to handle, like you and the other attorneys, like manage and handle beautifully to make sure that each party feels safe and heard still, no matter what the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I feel like that would shock most people that you could have a collaborative divorce with a couple where there was pretty intense
Yeah.
violence, abuse, discord, infidelity. I mean, always
Oh,
we have
yeah.
a handful of cases with infidelity. That
Yes.
does not exempt you from having a collaborative divorce.
Right.
Um, One of the things that Mark Springfield says, I can't believe I just heard this the first time from him within the past year after 10 years of practice. I sort of intuitively knew this, but never heard him say it. And he says, the parties don't actually have to be collaborative, but the attorneys do.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And yeah, it's so cool. And I think this would shock most family law attorneys. Like, how can you, this is one of the questions is like, how can you we as attorneys, I still have the duty to represent my clients and to advocate for
Mhm.
them and to look out for their best interests. How can you do that while collaborating with the spouse's attorney? And how can you do that and be non-adversarial? And my answer is I see what it looks like to be adversarial, and I don't see that serving my clients 9 times out of
Yeah.
10. And I do believe that there are times when the litigation system might have some benefits, or like it's too hard in a collaborative setting to advocate for someone with certain types of power dynamics imbalances, yada yada, depending on who all the professionals are. But what I think is I am advocating for my clients and I am working in their best interests by getting them a settlement that takes into account their interest, needs and interests, that gives them the highest degree of control
Mhm.
and choice over their own life. Is it perfect? No. Are they getting everything they want? No. But they won't get that in court. And here they have control and they have autonomy. They often
Yeah.
grow through the process because they're able to say things to their spouse and stand up for themselves or make these requests. And even if the request is turned down, they've had this process. So anyway, that is my that's my thoughts on how to still be able to advocate. But the
Mhm.
attorneys, I mean, you've seen these cases where this couple hates each other, and they're not
Yeah.
going to be best friends at the end of this, but they've gotten to an agreement. They've gotten
Mhm.
to it in a quicker timeline than court, and there's been so much less trauma, so much
Yeah.
less money. Maybe they've worked with a child specialist that has helped improve
Mhm.
co-parenting.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so you can do it with pretty high conflict folks, and it does look different. They're not crying at the
Yeah.
table. Like, we've had these beautiful cases. I remember one, I still love them so much. I just saw on Facebook their girls are growing up, where they wrote each other letters at the signing of their agreement
Mm.
saying, you know, um, I love you and I'll always love you and I'll always be so proud of what we built and we'll always be parents of these beautiful children. And this is the next chapter, and wishing each other well. I mean, that's stunning. But also, sometimes you leave in tears and you feel like that was painful. But I just feel like, people leave with so much less resentment and pain
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
anger. Their nervous systems are in way better shape.
Yeah. I know I remember the first time that I saw, like, after a signing, and I saw them, like, in the parking lot just hugging for, like, 5
Yeah.
minutes, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like, "Wow, okay, I was not prepared for that." Like, that was, emotional but beautiful that, they went through the whole collaborative process and they, were hugging it out saying, like, "We did it. We still, have respect and, some version, whatever that might look like, of love for each other." And it
Yeah.
was just beautiful to see that. I mean, I've seen it all at signing appointments. I've been the photographer while someone's, like, celebrating, like, "Yes,
Yeah.
this is fun, I'm free," and then I've seen the crying and hugging, so signing appointments, I'm always like, "What am I getting today? Which version of this am I gonna
Yeah.
have at this appointment?"
A lot of feelings at the signing appointments.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There was a case before your time where both spouses showed up wearing t-shirts that said "Yay divorce" with an
Oh,
exclamation mark. I just about died. I mean, they had tremendous pain and love and a child. Um,
yeah.
I just love those stories. Yeah. How about the one yesterday where we craft a mission statement often in the first meeting, where people talk about,
Yeah.
what are their hopes and dreams, what are their highest goals for their agreement, for their process. And mom said something like to dad, "You will never not be my
Mhm.
family."
My
And like,
family, yeah.
yeah, like, I don't want to be married, but we have raised a child so well. We will continue to do that. And you are my
Yeah.
family. And like, we will take care of each other if somebody's sick or in trouble. And now, yeah, and I think something important to say there is like, so those are exceptional people. Those are people who have done a lot of emotional work. They probably
Mhm.
have therapists and support systems, and they're extraordinary, and we don't get credit for that. But when you have that dynamic, if you go anywhere near a litigation based framework, even if you just go to a litigator and say, hey, draft up these
Mm-hmm.
terms, or, I just have one question about tax returns. Litigation attorneys are not trained in some of these like conflict resolution dynamics, and you could inadvertently like really harm that relationship.
Yeah.
And I always say I'm an untrained therapist, but we know how to not upset that. So if you come to me and you
Mm-hmm.
say like, hey, I know I could ask for alimony, but I don't want that because I don't need it, and it would upset our dynamics. Or like, hey, I know I could ask for 50-50 custody, but I don't think that's good for my kid. The litigator's going to be like, but you need to. And if you don't now, you might
Yeah.
want it later. And like really harm families who know what they're doing, who are experts in their
Yeah.
kids and their lives. So that with that family yesterday, what we got to say to them is like, hell yeah, we love that.
Mm-hmm.
We want y'all to be a family. Like, let's be creative. Let's be wild. Let's like figure out how you can both meet your financial needs. Let's give you an agreement that has so much flexibility for how you care for your kid. And
Yes.
it's just a whole different environment. So we're preserving preserving that so that you can hug at the signing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You don't leave enemies.
Yeah.
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 I think one of the important things we need to talk about is, what the process looks like, when you're at the table. How
Yeah.
long does the process take? Everybody always wants to know a time frame. How many meetings am I going to have
Yes.
to sit through?
Every time.
Give me a yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's important too to like give people, a little background of what that looks like. The first meeting, like Nicole said earlier, both attorneys and the spouses are in one room together. They sit at a round table. There's no sides. The first meeting, Nicole and all the attorneys always talk about how they're gonna bore you into comfort. They're gonna do a lot
Yeah.
of their talking in that first meeting. They go through the pledge. They go through nonviolent communication, negotiation, all of that. Um, and, so many people think the first meeting, like, let's go, let's pull out the numbers, let's start the spreadsheets, let's make decisions. I'm paying this, you're paying that. And that's not what happens in the first meeting at all. And sometimes people get frustrated, the type A people like me. I'm
Yeah.
sure I would probably be like, what do you mean we're not coming to any resolutions in this meeting? I'm ready to do that part.
Yeah.
So
Let's
it's
go. This is expensive.
yeah. Yeah, it is a process, but it's an important part of the process. So many times, Nicole and the attorneys have been like, remember in that first meeting how we talked about nonviolent communication and using I statements and not you and stuff. So that it is a very, very needed part of the process that you just kind of have to, for all you type A people, you got to grin and bear it. Just like
Yeah.
know that it's needed. We're not there to waste your time and your money, but you just got to sit through and it'll be worth it. And then, the other meetings, even like that second meeting is still a lot of information gathering. Like you guys mentioned, it's not always making decisions right away. Sometimes it is, but usually it's not. And it takes, a good couple meetings before you're in that brainstorming, let's start deciding on things. So I do think that's important for people to know what that looks like and what that process is. There is not a set number. It's not
Yeah.
like in 4 meetings we will have a final draft and you'll be done. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is like 3, 4 meetings. Sometimes it's like a year-long process because they just can't collaborate or compromise enough to come to agreements. So someone
Right.
is stuck on what they want
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
refusing to hear what the other person's needs and interests are, and they're like, I do not care, this is what I want. It's going to take a lot longer than 3 or 4 meetings. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's an important part
That's,
to know.
I love that you just said that. I never thought of it that way, but it's true. So the folks who take many, many meetings, it's not because you have complicated assets. I mean, true, if you have complicated assets or complicated something, you might need an extra meeting. But if you're at like 10 meetings, it's because of
Mhm.
conflict, it's because you're stuck.
Yeah.
And that that is why we work so hard to set that stage. Yeah, the longer I do this, the more I obsessively love that first meeting. I
Mhm.
think about Priya Parker. Do you know Priya Parker?
Mm-mm. No.
You might love her. She wrote this book that had a lot of press, maybe during or just after COVID, called The Art of Gathering. And her expertise is around how to have amazing events, whether it's a meeting, a party. You'll love this because you're an expert party
Yeah.
planner. Like town hall, something like this. Like, how do you gather people together and make it the best it can be?
Mhm.
And she talks about, like, if you have a structure and a setup and a clear prompt, like even if it's a baby shower, it's like have an activity, have a start time, have an end time, tell people what to wear. That actually helps the gathering so much.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're doing. It's like, this isn't like you show up to the lawyer's office and we just jump right into these like harsh questions about, like I said, the most sensitive things in your life. Like,
Yeah.
it's like an orientation. When I think about, like, I just did that amazing like leadership training called Triangle Leadership or Leadership Triangle in Durham. And when you have like great facilitators, they start by setting the stage. They start by saying, like, this is how long we're going to go today. This is where the restrooms are. This is when you'll eat lunch. This is who's in your group. These will be your assignments that are due. It's very calming. Like, you're like,
Mhm.
okay, there's guardrails, there's a system. And when you're divorcing, like, again, the whole fabric of your life is being upset. Like, Glennon Doyle has the metaphor of taking the picnic blanket and tossing everything up in the air. All of a sudden, your
Yeah.
home, your family, your kids, your identity is up in the air. So we, as the professionals, we want to say, like, I would say, like, there's grown-ups in here. Like, you're okay. You can chill out. We'll read to you about nonviolent
Mhm.
communication. And I want you to,
Mhm.
yeah, get tired, cry, yawn, have a snack with snacks on the table.
Yeah.
And so we're setting this whole stage and we're telling you where you're going and we're slowing it down. It's like, hurry up and
Mhm.
slow down. And
Yeah.
and it is the most efficient way to do this. Time
Yeah.
after time after time. It is not most efficient to start with a proposal when you don't even know the information, you don't even know what the financial disclosures are, you don't know if you can assume or refi your mortgage, you don't know what your spouse, whether your spouse wants to buy a house or move to Mexico. You don't
Mhm.
know that. So we have to start slower. And then we
Mhm.
can solve the problems once we have the information. And once everyone is trustworthy, some people come in there so defensive, ready to fight,
Yeah.
or so scared they don't even want to,
Yes.
or so blindsided that they don't
Mhm.
know what they want. So we start with human technology, calming people and listening, asking questions, not like, do you want to keep the house or not? But questions like, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
What do you want your kid to do? And
Yeah.
it's so cool.
Mhm. Mhm. I love it.
And then, yeah, so you started, that's the first meeting. And then, at least in our community, we do 2-hour meetings because
Yep.
we found that longer than 2 hours, people get exhausted and start making crappy decisions. And shorter than 2 hours, you might not be able to get into meet. I don't want like doing a 1 hour meeting where we're rush, 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 because you want to leave
Yes.
feeling like you have made some movement and that people can have more than 3 minutes to talk about,
Mhm.
where they want to live or
Right.
how they're going to
Right.
pay their bills.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then we go until it's done, and then you get, Nat keeps talking about the signing appointments. All of your terms that you've agreed to, custody, division of assets, child support, etc., goes into a binding separation agreement. It is enforceable in court, but it is not entered in court. It's not part of the public record. It's not Googleable so that your whole life's business isn't on the internet.
Mhm.
Um, you never have to step foot in a courtroom. The attorneys, handle the actual divorce, the termination of the marriage. I did two this morning, but the clients don't have to go. And yeah, it's very peaceful, and very nonviolent,
Hmm.
even when it's terrible. It's still much better than litigation, even in the worst cases. And in most cases, it's truly nonviolent.
Yeah. I always warn people when they're looking or asking about collaborative attorney options, like, look at their website. Is their website primarily litigation and you see a little buzzword here and there about collaborative law? They're probably not going to do a true collaborative law
Yep.
process for you. Like, what does their website say? Does it only talk about collaborative law? Let's give them a call. Like, let's try that. But, you know, if their focus is litigation and they kind of do a little bit of collaborative, it's probably not going to be what we're describing here today for you.
That's right. So important because this work is so different than litigation. You know, they call it in the jargon, they call it a paradigm shift. You go from being adversarial to non adversarial, but this is skilled work. Like I said, we're untrained therapists, but like, I mean, hours and hours of training on trauma, psychology, social work, nonviolent communication, conflict resolution. That's what we're learning. We're not learning about like, how do you put a tracker on your spouse's car and be able to have the evidence be admissible? I don't know how to do that.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I do know how to help you identify your needs and listen to your spouse, your ex spouse, even when they're being really annoying and triggering. So you need someone who does that. And it's the very few who can do both. But Nata's right. If you mostly litigate, it is almost impossible to sit around this round table and hear your
Hmm.
client say like, I know I could get alimony, but I don't want it because I don't think that's good for my kid. Like a litigator is just going to be like, what are you doing? You could have more
Yes.
money.
Yeah.
And the truth is that more money isn't always better, or that it's not better financially long term. And I'm not saying that we just like tell people to give up alimony. That's not the case at all. Just that that's
Hmm.
one example of something that people do differently than the legal standard because it's good
Yeah.
for your family. Or even just how you communicate. I mean, these emails from litigators, every time we get one, Natalie and I are both shaking because they're like, attention, Attorney Quallen,
Yeah.
per our client's note, we hear that you have da 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 da. Please respond within 3 business days.
Yes. It's like, that's
This is
not
how
how we
we
talk
talk to
around
lawyers.
here.
Like, hi Trey, how are you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I saw your kid got into UNC. Amazing. Hey, my client's struggling with X. Could we talk about it?
Yeah.
You know, over lunch. Like that's how we talk to
Exactly.
each other every
Exactly.
time. Every
Yes.
time. Like 10 years, I haven't had a single email with a truly collaborative attorney, the people we practice with all the time, where they have done anything to insinuate that anything is personal or my fault or that I'm bad or that my client's bad. Even when my clients are bad, like that's
Yeah.
how we do it.
Yeah.
So nice. What else? Is there anything else that folks should know about collaborative divorce? Stuff that we didn't.
I think, one point that I wanted to bring up about like the specialists that I think is
Yeah.
important is, I know, at least I know for child specialists, I'm pretty sure for financial as well, but correct me if I'm wrong, um, that they are part of, you know, your family now after the process ends. Like, we just had we just had a child specialist tell us that one of our clients, they both parents checked in with her like a year after the process was done and was like, can we chat again? Like, we have some co-parenting issues we need to work on. So they're there, like they are there still after the process. Once you are done seeing everything, you've signed your document, you can check in and be like, hey, we need to, have another session, or our kid needs to talk to you again. And they are there to help you through that process. So I think that's another important thing to note about those specialists and why they're there.
That's right. That was so cool. So Nat and I, we had another case with this child specialist who works with lots of our families, and she said they had done 3 rounds. So one round was in collaborative. Then they came to her because either one or both of the parents had a new significant other and they wanted the
Mm-hmm.
guidance of a child psychologist who knew their family and knew their kids to say, how do we talk about this? How do we integrate this person? And then, right, they came back for a checkup with co-parenting stuff.
Yeah.
We see it a lot for child or for significant others. Yeah, it's like, it's so
Yeah.
freaking cool because if you didn't have that, you're sort of left to like Google, how do I
Yeah.
introduce my significant other to my kids without traumatizing them? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I
yeah.
love it.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's holistic. It's human. It's not perfect. It's vulnerable, and it's an amazing way to divorce. I hope everyone's talking about it. I hope lawyers and law students are thinking about how to get into this
Mm-hmm.
career. I hope every family who's contemplating divorce considers it, and thinks about whether it's a viable option for your family.
Mm-hmm.
You can always reach out to Two Families Law to ask for North Carolina recommendations. And then if you're outside North Carolina, the international organization I keep referencing, it's called the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, IACP. I think that's what the A is. And that is an international organization where collaborative lawyers around the world register and state where they practice. So wherever you are, you can look there and find a collaborative professional in your area and have a consultation. In a post-COVID world, we work on Zoom. So we're in Durham and we're working with families now who are in Asheville, 4 hours
Mm-hmm.
away on Zoom, and that's an option. So it's quieter, it's less dramatic, it's not on soap operas, but it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful as hell, and it's a growth opportunity, and it's a way to divorce healthy, as Natalie was
Mm-hmm.
saying, and to keep your to set up your two families for success. Or if you remain one family, like that one we were talking about, maybe
Yeah.
you're one family in two houses, maybe you're two families. Um, Either way, you have more money in your bank account, less trauma,
Mm-hmm.
more health.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any final words?
Um, I don't think so. I just think, yeah, I think you said it beautifully. You ended it beautifully.
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging out with Nik and Nat to learn about collaborative divorce. Share this
Mm-hmm.
with a friend who is interested in the process. Listen to our other episodes to hear about child specialists, about healing, and about the many different stories of folks who have divorced in ways that are peaceful and not. And we'll be back with more episodes soon, right? We've got a lot more interviews with
Yes.
divorced people, and we plan to continue doing some Nik and Nat chats, just the two of us talking about some of the
Yeah.
stuff that we see and do.
If there's a topic you want us to talk about, let us know. Email us
Totally.
hello@divorcepeoplepod.com. Tell us in social media. Let us know something that you want us to chat about.
Totally. Natalie is on social media until 11:30 p.m., so you can find her if her husband doesn't take her phone away from her. And
Right.
tell us what you want to talk about. I told you a friend just texted me saying they wanted to hear from a couples therapist. So we've got to
Oh,
find a
yeah.
divorced couples therapist to come talk with us.
Love
Um,
that.
yeah, man. Okay. Bye, Nat.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Divorced People Podcast. Always remember, whether you're in a marriage or going through a divorce, you're not alone.